sit here all night, but most of you very well know what skills we possess as pilots. But let's just look at preparation, for example. I mean, prepping for an international flight at Emirates or with such a diverse network, you've got to realize that a lot of the time you're flying to a destination you've never been to before. You're flying with crew that you've never met. Or even if you have been there before, you haven't been there for the last year. You've got North Atlantic operations, polar operations. You're flying over the Himalayas when you head to China. And each of those have a whole set of procedures and contingency procedures to plan and prepare. So they had a fantastic company portal with endless resources. So preparation for flights like that would normally start days in advance, where you could access all the necessary resources and plan accordingly. Another interesting thing as far as infrastructure goes with Emirates, they had a chauffeur service. So pilots would be collected from their villa and driven to work, and so would the cabin crew and buses, which made a lot of sense. It's something simple, but if you think about it, on a 380 alone on a long-haul flight, there's 4 pilots, 26 cabin crew, that's 30 people. One is bound to be late. So how do you prevent the operation from running behind schedule? You bring the people to work and no one has an excuse of being late. So, it worked like clockwork. Depending on where you lived, you would have a standard pickup time. For me, it was 2 hours, 25 minutes prior to the flight. The vehicle without fail would be sitting outside my villa. Jump in, you get dropped off at Emirates headquarters, EGHQ, which is across the road from the airport. You walk in, there's probably about 50 e-gates, sign in with your fingerprint, walk up to a kiosk, check into the kiosk with your crew card, and a screen would pop up where you self-certify your documents, your medical, your license, and all that sort of thing. And then another very interesting thing I heard you guys mention on one of your shows the other night, you were talking about drug and alcohol tests and how, one could go through a whole career in aviation in South Africa and never have a single drug or alcohol test. In fact, I'd never had one prior to going to Emirates. And in my short 5 years there, I had 3 drug and alcohol tests. So it would randomly pop up, send you off. And the reason I'm mentioning all this is just to give you an idea of the infrastructure that it takes to run an operation like this. It would then send you off to your briefing room. There were 36 briefing rooms. And the way the briefing rooms were laid out were 2 parts. So you would have a large sort of conference room where the cabin crew would sit, with an interleading smaller room for the pilots. So the pilots would arrive within minutes of each other. And just to set the scene in your mind, it's now 3 o'clock in the morning. You walk into this briefing room as a South African. You've got 3 other pilots on an ultra long haul flight. You've got an Indian captain, the augmenting captain's an Australian, and the augmenting FO is a Brazilian. There's 4 guys from 4 corners of the earth from 4 different cultures. And literally within minutes, you spend 10 minutes together, very brief briefing. You've already all self-briefed at home. It's really just a threat-based briefing. You form a team rapport in those minutes, and then off you go to brief the cabin crew. There's a computer telling you it's now time to go and brief the cabin crew. And there's only 3 minutes allocated to brief these 26 cabin crew, again, potentially from 26 different cultures. And that's what really fascinated and impressed me with that operation, is you could walk into this room and within 3 minutes, you could give them the flight details, establish a chain of command, delegate some flight duties, and then also encourage an open cockpit door policy, so that the most junior grade 2 on the flight wasn't scared to speak up should they see, hear, or smell something that they're not happy with. So it was really phenomenal in that sense. And without going on too much longer, you would head out of the briefing room. Downstairs there were 21 bus lanes. Jump into your bus under network of roads under the airport and arrive almost to the minute, an hour before departure at your airplane. Jump in this airplane, set it up, and then fly into the dark night over the North Pole with guys you've never met in your life, and do so safely and efficiently. It's quite unbelievable.
It's nice to be explained that. Jason, you said there that you self-brief at home. Can you talk about that a little bit more? Because I think there's a few pilots out there that one of the things at Simaero that we talk about a lot is this, going over these rehearsals. What are you going to do today if something goes wrong? And not to run any countries down, or it's not about that at all. But when you're in an environment like that, you learn all these things from lots of other people. I'm sure you learned a hell of a lot from some of these captains that you flew with there. And in Africa, we probably a little bit more isolated, so people don't get to work with someone like you. You're stuck in your smaller environment. I mean, even us at SA Express, you're in that environment. Unless someone's bringing new information in, you're working in this pool of knowledge. Briefing at home. What would you do? How would you prepare for a flight?
Brian, I'd always start off by asking someone who's been there and done that. I think there's nothing like getting information out of the horse's mouth. So I would start. If I knew I was going to a destination that was renowned to be difficult, a classic example is JFK. Start asking guys on the weeks leading up to that you fly with. What tips do you have for JFK? What are the threats? To build a mental model. That's what I really try and aim at doing in terms of preparation, is building a mental model for the flight. Do they keep you high? What are the common sort of things? Give you a runway with a tailwind for landing, or whatever the case may be, just so you can plan accordingly. But other than that, there's so many resources that Emirates had. You could look at a specific route and get all the information you needed, but it was sometimes quite overwhelming, to be honest, especially in the beginning, like your first North Atlantic crossing, for argument's sake. At the end of the day, it's fairly straightforward until things start going pear-shaped. I had one or two incidences where we were unable to get a clearance and things like that, and then the guys start sitting up straight in their seats and looking through all these procedures. But there's a hell of a lot of resources. So yeah, I would prep. To go into detail, I think we would be here all night. But I was just listening to Ian Finley on last week's or 2 weeks ago's show, and was quite inspired to hear about the way he preps, because I'm pretty the same. I think I'm a bit of an over prepper. Even back to my Airlink days, I recall also, like Ian said, being at sign on half an hour before everyone else, getting the paperwork in order, etc. But I really believe that the more well prepared you are, the smoother things go, and it makes the operation less stressful. It frees up capacity to be able to focus on other things and pick up other threats that are going on around you. On numerous occasions, I sat in the jump seat as augmenting crew coming out of Washington, for argument's sake. I remember the one day the FO jumped in, a well-experienced guy, had been at Emirates longer than me, and he jumped in and he started looking through the AOIs and CCIs, which were company basically points of procedures at that particular airport, and that should have all been done at home. So the guy got so overwhelmed, he then missed the departure clearance. The captain had to get it for him, and the thing started going pear-shaped. So it goes without saying, as Alex McPhail has mentioned in a lot of his conversations as well, that preparation is key.